Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Get Wealth podcast. Today I have here Van Hagye, real estate investor. I saw you on the Bigger Pockets and you had a lot of great stuff to say. Kind of what you were explaining on that was how you went from 0 to 300 units in a year, which is kind of mind blowing because, I mean, what are you, 20 something years old? I mean, most people don't do that and who knows how long. So I definitely want to dive into all the real estate stuff and just kind of pick your brain, but thanks for coming on the show, man.
Absolutely, man. Pleasure to be on.
So what's your background? Like, are you just all real estate right now, or how did you get into what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm currently in middle school. I'm about to go into 8th grade. I'm kidding. So I grew up in a pretty wealthy area. And so growing up, I didn't know much about money though. So like my parents, my mom has a 9-to-5. I've never seen someone who loves a 9-to-5 job more in their life. She worked in tech, or I should say worked at IBM for like 20 years, kind of made her way up the ranks and then eventually moved over to Apple, which was a big like pay raise for her. But I don't even know if she knows how much money she makes. She just loves her job. And then my dad has not worked. So when me and my sister were born, he quit. He taught music at UT Austin here in Austin, where I was born. And so, yeah, like growing up, I didn't ever hear a single thing about investing. We definitely were not poor, and I will never claim to be poor, but it was definitely like, you know, Chili's was like the family night out. Like that was the real deal every month. And so then I kind of got to high school, again in Austin, and because my parents moved here in the 90s, which I'm sure most people know to some degree. Austin has just exploded in the last 20, 30 years. But my parents kind of built their house, you know, for like $100K, which was more than they could afford. And then all of a sudden they accidentally just picked a hot spot. And so now I have all these super, super rich friends growing up. And it's like, man, how do my friends have boats and like lake houses and like all this crazy stuff? And so I got to high school, and again, my peers are talking about going to college and going to Ivy Leagues and doing all this crazy stuff. And I've actually been a horrible student my whole life. I hate school. I suck at it. And I'm not even totally on the Gary Vee train of like, I think college is a scam. I just think I'm bad at it. I think it's great for some people, but like, I just can't do it. So anyway, I did end up going to college though. So like, even though I fail every class, I just like did well on those standardized tests, which somehow got me like snuck in. So I ended up going to UT Austin, which was my dream school, studying engineering. And again, that really is not a matter of like I'm passionate about engineering. It's a matter of I just liked cars, and that was kind of the next step that you take. I didn't know what else to do with my life. And then I got to school. It was even harder than high school. I still hated school, and I was paying for it. So I started really questioning what I was doing with my life. And then I went and did an internship at an engineering manufacturer. So it was cool because I got to make engineer money, work engineer hours, like get the full experience of working. And like 2 or 3 days in, I was just freaking out and I could not do it. And I was like, man, when do I ever get to just have like a month off again? And like, man, when do I ever get to just go on a walk at like, 2 p.m.? Or am I always just going to be in meetings or at work? Or so I was just having this like crisis of my life looking so monotonous for 4 years. And I'll talk more on that. I actually am not a hater of 9-to-5s, but really that's what sent me on my journey of like just getting into investing, any way to make money, trying to understand wealth and how to build it, because I did not have a background in investing. Even to this day, the most my parents really know is, hey, either do what Van tells us to do or just like dump money in the S&P 500. And that's pretty much the extent of their knowledge. So from there, I kind of fell in love with real estate. And then long story short, took, basically a big risk and turned down some job offers for like tech engineering jobs and said, hey, I'm going to try to make this real estate thing work. And then I have a partner, Kyle, and he actually has a more intense story. He dropped out of college. But we came together and we said, hey, let's just do some deals. And then to date, I've personally done 3 deals. Kyle has done 4, I guess. He did 2 on his own. I did 1 on my own. And then now we've done 2 together. And so that's what we're doing now. So we just invest in multifamily. We're definitely looking to branch into more stuff. But we raise money from investors and we use it to buy real estate. I assume that'll be mostly real estate in the future, but there is some other asset classes we're interested in. But yeah, that's what we're doing now.
That's so cool. And so are you doing any engineering right now?
No, so I totally sent it, turned down all the job offers. Like I am full time, whatever you want to call it, co-founder Zion Capital. That's our company.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean the deals, the 3 deals, those were pretty large deals from what I have heard you talk about, right? Can you tell me about, let's go with the first one. How did you get that one?
Yeah, so full transparency, that first deal, that is cool because I get to, pop it up in headlines next to my name or whatever. It was a 336 unit apartment in North Carolina. And really what happened there, so I fell in love with real estate and I said, okay, I understand cash flow. I understand like principal pay down, the fact that, someone else can pay down my mortgage just blew my mind. And so that was kind of the route I was taking, and I kind of really fell in love with that from Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I'm sure most people reading this or listening to this have read, and if you haven't, highly recommend. But then, right before I was gonna like take that engineering money and get the duplex, I met up with Kyle, and he had just done his first syndication, and he was telling me about this model of like raising money from other people to buy apartments, essentially doing the exact same thing, but just at a bigger scale when you can raise money from people. And I was like, and honestly, to be totally transparent, the competitive side of me went, what the hell? Like, no one's allowed to be better than me. So I was like, let me figure this out. Let me see what I can do. And so, long story short, I kind of did the same thing. But for that 300 unit, it's not my deal. I'm not the lead operator on that deal. But what I did is I said, how can I get into these deals? Because what I don't want to do is just buy like 100 single family houses over the next like 30 years, I was putting the numbers into a spreadsheet and just thinking like, unless this area just like 20x's in value, like this is still going to take me longer than I want to retire. And so I was like, how can I weasel my way into these big deals, or at least find a way to like learn about this investment space so that I can do it? And the way to do that, essentially the mindset I came into is, let me find an experienced operator who's done this before, who knows how to like raise money and buy apartments and run them. And there's a couple things you can do. You can add value to them. It's just like a buzz phrase everyone uses. And that can mean maybe you help with their marketing, maybe you help with their underwriting, whatever it might be in their business that they need help with. But one thing that's kind of decoupled from your experience or your age or your intelligence or whatever is just money. So if you can bring money to a deal, deals need money. And so that's kind of what I did. I helped raise capital for that deal. And again, I don't want to, put up some facade of like, oh, I'm the operator. I ran the deal. I knew what I was doing. I mean, really what I did is I said, hey, if I bring y'all some money, will you let me sit on the meetings? I'll help whatever I need to do. I'll send emails, whatever you need me to do just to get in on this deal and like see how the sausage is made. And then I did that. And so I brought money to the deal, got in, saw how it was run. And essentially, Kyle did something really similar, and then we came together and said, hey, now that we know how to do this, let's go do it on our own. And so that's what we do now. We've closed on one property, and then we have a second one under contract that we close on 6 days from now. And so now we're the lead operator. So we found the deals, we're raising the money, and then we're running them. So that's kind of the progression of how my investing has gone. But.
Man, that's so cool. So I guess even just the way it sounds, right? You even said like you can put it in titles because it looks cool, but 330 whatever units, isn't that daunting? Because you're just starting out and, probably you didn't really have much experience before that. So what was your mindset going into it? Were you just kind of trying to take the back seat, or was it a little bit overwhelming with just dealing with that much volume?
Yeah, so it's actually kind of the other way. It actually was it was peaceful knowing that, hey, this is actually on a lot of people's shoulders, because that deal, for one, I had family and friends invest in that deal to, help me bring more money to the deal so that I could get in. And it was both better for their psyche or their mental well-being and mine and everyone involved that, hey, this guy's done this 20 times before. He has a proven track record of delivering returns. Like, this is a very solid investment you're making. So it's good for me because obviously it helps me get in a deal. It's good for my investors because they know that this person actually knows what the hell they're doing. And then obviously it's good for the sponsor because they are getting money. So I actually didn't take on much responsibility. And that's also reflected. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I made a ton of money on that deal because I did not. I mean, obviously you're compensated with some equity depending on how the deal's structured, but like really the value to me was just getting to see how that deal was run. So like I did not take too much responsibility. It wasn't a lot of work on my end. Really, it was just getting my investors in the deal and then helping out with basic like reporting and just kind of like being a mediator from like the people actually running the deal, because I was able to lean on the experience and the actual asset management of a big team with a lot of experience. And then it was definitely more daunting to take and do that on our own, even at a smaller scale, like 42 unit that we closed on in April, even though that's, almost a tenth of the size. It is a lot more daunting because now you're responsible for getting the units leased. You're responsible for renovations. You're responsible for like signing on the loans. It's a lot more responsibility, but I definitely felt like the 300 unit was easier. Maybe it's kind of difficult to like put it into one word, but it's kind of the thing where it's very simple, but like difficult to take that first step. And now we're in the position where, deals flow a little easier. It's kind of easier to do deals ourselves, but now it's way more complex. But that first deal is just like taking the jump. It's not actually like difficult to do.
Yeah.
As far as like being a capital raiser. But
so did you come out of that deal feeling like you knew a lot more than you did when you went in, like bringing you a little bit of confidence into the next one?
Yeah, in a way, yes, and in a way, no. I think in one way, I totally learned like, oh, what the heck a closing process is, how like the loan closing lines up with the legal closing and everything consolidating, and then you take over, and then we start renovations, and like you just like when you actually see a deal run in real time, it connects a lot of dots that you can't really get from a book or from a podcast or anything. But in the other sense, me saying it didn't teach me anything is it didn't teach me as much as I thought it would. I thought it would be this crazy thing with all these moving parts that I couldn't comprehend. And you kind of see behind the curtain and you're like, there's no reason I can't do this. So in a way, I totally did see, like I did connect some dots that I had not seen before, but also you realize there's not as many dots as you think. Not to say that it's easy. It's hard. We're grinding right now, but like, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that doing this podcast has been one of the coolest parts of it for me, and I want to say this the right way because I don't want to take away from anything you've done and like your experience, but I've found that there's a common theme of just normal people that are able to just do things. They're like I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't need to be like a rocket scientist or some person with millions of dollars. Like it just takes someone who's motivated like yourself. I mean, yeah, you got to be a smart person and to not do things that are completely gonna blow things up, but like you just like if you have some simple reasoning and logical processes that you can apply and someone can kind of show you, like you're just an example of doing something and creating success just out of pure action taking, like I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it's a lifelong thing that I'm going to continually try to figure out of how in the world people succeed, because like you said, like Grant Cardone is a great example. If you think his IQ is over 110, then you're tripping. Like the dude is not smart, but he just, some people, and I'm not even saying we should aspire to have that particular type of success, but it's just, you cannot boil it down to one thing, which is like so fascinating to me, because it's not just like a number on a bell curve. How smart are you? There's homeless people rocking 150 IQs for sure. It's not necessarily even how like motivated you are, or like how much, because I see people who are super fired up who never ever, you know, actually move forward. And I see people who take a lot of action, but they spin their wheels. So like I even know people who, they're reaching out to 100 brokers a week and 100 investors a week, and they're doing all this crazy stuff, but they haven't moved in 3 years. And it's like I wish I could point to one thing of why people succeed, but ultimately, there's like an it factor that I think is a combination of multiple things. And I don't know that I'm qualified enough, but to your point, yes, like there is no secret. There's no like magic. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, because I love Gary Vee. For anyone who listens to Gary Vee, totally love the dude. There's no but to that. Or I guess there is. One but is that like the thing that I don't like when he says is, oh, I'm just an entrepreneur. Like, I'm just born like this. Yeah. You guys don't have it. I do. And like, you can't like, because in a way what he's saying is you can't do what I'm doing because I was born with something that you don't have. And that's something I'll never ascribe to. It's like, it really is just a matter of doing it. It's kind of crazy. And like, Steve Jobs has that quote of like, this world is kind of, you poke one side of the wall and see what comes out the other. It's as simple as that. Like you do things and then more things happen in life. And I don't think anyone can limit themselves to, oh, but I have a wife and a kid, or, oh, but, I'm just not as smart, or I don't have as many connections, or I was poor, or whatever. Like, anyone can do anything, as like motivational guru as that sounds. Like,
no, for sure. Do you feel almost lucky that you've been able to start at such a young age? Because it seems like as you get older, it becomes a lot harder because you have so much more responsibilities, but you've just, stumbled across the right influences to shape your mind to think the way you do. And now you probably can't see it the other way again,
No, 100%. And I also say that I don't take credit for, like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm so sick, I figured this out before all y'all, like, whatever. I think I'm the product of society kind of shifting. I think really I'm a product of the wealth gap widening, because especially as crypto is going to explode in the next 5-10 years, real estate valuations are just exploding. Credit card debt is also going up. It's just this very clear divergence of wealth. And I think I'm just a product of that, because in the 1950s, I could go work at the factory, get my paycheck, dump it in my savings account, probably earn 4% or whatever on it, not even think about it. Inflation's at 0.5%, everyone's chilling. And now we're at the point with, inflation again is already hitting. It's going to continue to, increase. And just whatever the hell is going on with this quantitative easing stuff, and wages are going up. We're kind of at the point where if you don't invest, you lose. And so that's why I think on like TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff, we're seeing like 16-year-olds dishing out like investing advice. And that's kind of what got me fired up, is I feel like I'm the very first wave, or maybe I wouldn't even say the very first wave. There's people like, older than me who were getting me into like digital, like e-commerce. And I remember watching a video in like 2015, and it's this 16-year-old who runs like a $5 million cannabis company. And I was just thinking like, I thought that was just something, like I thought I couldn't be a CEO until I was like 60. And so I think I'm just a product of, like you said, just being in the right place at the right time and the right things happening to me. And I definitely am not the first, and I definitely won't be the last. It just blows me away when I talk to some kids who are like, oh yeah, I have a Shopify store, it makes me like $800K a year, and they're like 18, and I'm just thinking like, wow, that is brand new to society. Like that has not ever happened before.
Yeah, that is cool to think about it that way. That, I mean, really in the history of the world where there's an opportunity to kind of gain that much momentum at such a young age. And it's kind of, I think it's partly changing because of the access to information, because you're certainly not going to learn about it in school, right? They don't teach you how to become an entrepreneur. You have to, like, literally, like you, on your bigger pockets, you were saying you would just go ask for Zoom calls on LinkedIn to, pick people's brain. Like most people aren't going to go out of their way to do that,
Yeah, definitely, dude. Information is we're in this crazy, and again, we don't have to dive into crypto, but I love crypto. And I will say that like we're kind of on the tail end of this information revolution where, like you said, I can just like hop on LinkedIn, some dude who's worth $100 million thinks I'm cute, so he hops on a phone call with me, and like that is unbelievably valuable. And I think crypto is going to kind of be the wave of like financial over, like, because information, or I guess what I should say is like the dot-com boom connected the entire world with information. Like, literally, the internet is just transfer of information. Like even at uh, a physical level, it's just literally us sending information through wires to people. And I think crypto is going to be the connection of the world through finances. And so that's another crazy thing I talk about it. In a weird way, my optimistic view is that crypto is going to level the playing field for people in developing countries and stuff. But the other things, like I said, people who just don't understand like how to use the phone. So like for example, we deal in C-class property. Some people don't even know how to pay online rent. They still pay with like a check or just cash or something. And like people who are raised with that financial background, it's going to be a tough decade, I think, for them. Because I have some of my friends come up to me and they're like asking about real estate investing. They're like early 20s, and they're like, man, I want to get a duplex. Like, but you did a 300 unit. Should I get a 300 unit? And it's like, no, dude, get your duplex. Like, if you own real estate, you're winning, and you're just gonna win, period. And the fact that, because I remember thinking I was so cool when I was 20 trying to get a duplex, and because none of my friends were talking about it. Now, even in like 2 years, all of my friends are trying to like get a house or a duplex or something. I feel like the age of home, maybe not home ownership, but investment age or whatever, people getting their first investment property is just like declining. And I think that's a product of like everyone waking up and going, whoa, if I don't make my money work for me, like I'm screwed. So.
Yeah, definitely. Here's a question for you with crypto. Would you accept crypto as in a real estate transaction?
Dude, so that's a good question. For one, as far as to profit off of it, not really. I saw something funny, and it was like some guy thinking he's super smart because he's like, instead of taking $1 million for my house, I accepted 800K in Bitcoin. And it's like, dude, you could have taken $1 million and put $1 million in Bitcoin. So as far as accepting crypto payments, I don't necessarily know that there's a benefit to that yet, but I do think there's going to be some really cool stuff in the future. We've even talked about like people are starting to tokenize properties. So, because right now it's a pretty antiquated process where, you write me a $50,000 check, we pull it all together, we buy the property. You don't get your money back, until we sell the thing, theoretically, other than like distributions. But potentially in the future, it could be almost like a Robin Hood thing where maybe we have a, property that we split up into 100,000 coins, and you can buy and sell coins like an exchange. And so, you put in however much money you want, and you get 6% paid out daily or something crazy, So I totally think that there's going to be a, digital revolution in real estate investing. But for now, I'll just make dollars and then put it into crypto. But
yeah, well, real estate's something that's so tried and true since the beginning of time, really. It's how people have always measured wealth, is how much land you own. And it's so repeatable, right? So if you can kind of figure out a way to get into it, really just got to keep kind of chipping away.
100%. Like, that's the thing, that because this wealth gap is widening, there's two parts to that. Unfortunately, for the people who just, hopefully understand saving, it's even worse for the people who don't understand saving. But those people are just going to get crushed because they're going to continue making their salary. But, a loaf of bread at the store is going to double in price, and their salary is only going to go up 1.5 times. And so I think there's going to be a pretty interesting housing crisis, affordable housing crisis that, potentially already exists. That's debatable. But the other half of that is the wave. Some people are just going to get caught in the wave. And so some people are going to be 22. They're going to buy a duplex. The thing's going to 5X, and they're going to be like, that was the best investment I ever made. And it's like, well, yeah, I think if you're not to say there's not going to be a crash. I'm not telling everyone to go buy a house, right? Like, there's such thing as a good and a bad investment. But like, I just think that people who are already thinking of like equity, passive income, you're going to win. Like if you just like say, how can my money buy more money? If you just let that compound for 20 years, you're going to crush. Like, so.
Yeah. And the problem is that I think people have this illusion that because it's simple, it's like kind of like you were saying, it's not going to be complex, right? It sounds simple, like, oh yeah, just get cash flow and have passive income. But there's a lot of diligence and discipline that goes into learning how to become effective and make the right investment and buy the right deal or whatever it is. If it's not in real estate, there's a lot that goes into it, right? You can go a whole year actively trying to do something, and it just takes a lot of learning before you actually close on something. But I think that's just kind of the way it has to be, right? You got to put in the work.
Yeah, definitely.
But so kind of going back to real estate a little bit, where are your leads coming from now? Are you doing a bunch of cold calling, or are you just kind of referral based, or how does that work?
Yeah, so again, from a syndication perspective, which is just us pooling money to like buy properties we can't get on our own, there's a lot of types of leads, right? So there's like properties, like where are we actually finding properties? And then there's investors, where are we raising money from? And then obviously part of that property leads is dealing with brokers, so making sure that like our relationships are set there. And then there's lots of, property manager relationships. There's a lot of pieces in the puzzle to like make sure are always in good standing. But the one thing I've noticed is like I had 0 leads. So before I had done a deal, I was reaching out to brokers, investors, saying, hey, send me deals, send me money, like without knowing at all what was going on. And I think I want to be careful to like give advice on this, because I'm definitely like not a pro, and I don't want to like impart any wisdom that I pretend to have. But the one thing I will say is that was kind of an example of spinning my wheels, because really what I should have just focused on is getting in a deal. Because once I got in a deal, I learned what was going on. And then after I'd done that deal, then, because how we got that first deal that we did on our own was a broker that we had been talking to for a while, who, thought these kids don't know what they're doing. And then after we had done those big deals where we were just money raisers, he said, okay, maybe I'll like throw these kids a bone. So he threw us a bone. It was a nice 42 unit here in Austin. We made it work. It's something that requires a little bit more elbow grease, that like it's a little too small for institutions to be interested in, but it's a little too big for just like a mom and pop, because a mom and pop can tackle a 10 unit or something and handle the leasing process over email. But with a 42 unit, it does require some kind of property management for sure. But like I said, it's too small for some private equity firm to waste their time on it. They'd rather just go buy the 300 unit down the street.
Yeah.
So it was a good opportunity for us to jump in, and that was where we got to prove ourselves. And throughout the process, went really smoothly, luckily. Again, some of that stuff's out of our control, but luckily it just went well. The money got raised, property was in good condition, loan got closed, everything's good. But when we closed that deal, the broker said, hey, that was very impressive. He was like, y'all closed? That was the easiest closing I've had all year. Like excited to work with y'all more in the future. And at that point, that following week, we got lunch with like 5 of the biggest other brokers in Austin. We're friends with that guy now. And we really told him like, dude, this is invaluable to us. Like, we're excited to have this, 20-year relationship, not just like a thanks for the deal thing. And he wants to sell us more deals, and we want to do more deals. So it's like very synergistic relationship. And then, like I said, once you close on that deal, now, because it was kind of hard to market that first deal too, because, someone would say, well, how many deals have y'all managed before? And it's like, well, none. I've seen how deals are run. And so it's the same effect of once we did that first deal where we're the lead sponsors, now people, we're like, for raising money on the second deal, they're like, well, how many deals have you done before? We can say, hey, we've done this one. Here's all the problems we encountered. Here's how we solved all of them. This is how we know. And it's not even a matter of pitching. It's a matter of we actually know what we're doing now. in that sense. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert, but just like, it's just every deal you actually gain more credibility, not only to other people, but to yourself. So, and the seller of the deal we're about to close on actually went behind the broker's back and came to us and said, hey, we have another 112 unit. Do you want to buy it? And we said, maybe. So we're working on that right now. But again, that's just kind of a cool thing of, the seller goes, hey, these dudes are legit. They can close. We might want to sell. We don't want to pay a broker fee. So then deals kind of just start flowing to you, and then money kind of starts flowing to you. And it's funny, when I did that Bigger Pockets podcast, we had not closed on our like a deal as a lead sponsor yet. But the thing aired 6 months later when we had. And so I'm getting all these people reaching out to me, which is so crazy to me. It had never happened before. And now, like, equity partners, I'm getting emails from this guy who's like, hey man, I'm from, I think he's from the Northeast, and he's like, love your story. We have a big firm. We really want to invest in Austin. Like, let me know if y'all want us to like help you take down a deal. And so, like, I think once you actually do stuff, like, because that's where you want to get. It's almost like the same idea of passive income, but with like people, because you don't want to. It's fun to think, oh, I'm going to send out 100 cold emails a day, but obviously that's not sustainable. Like, you want to get to the point where you're having to comb through 100 emails a day of people trying to like give you leads. So I think, and again, not to say that I'm there right now. We're still at the very early stages of our careers, but like, I would say the deal flow, and as far as properties, investors, raising money is getting easier. We're even thinking about how we can scale that. It's very much just a snowball effect. Like, finding the first snowball is difficult, and I don't want to understate that. But once it gets rolling, like, it's kind of just momentum.
And that's so cool. And I think you spoke to a lot of great points, especially with the relationships with people is almost a currency. You can really leverage that, even how you and your partner that you started out with have been able to, work on deals together and kind of use each other's strengths. And then raising the private money, which is another thing I wanted to ask you, because that seems that's probably the number one factor that kind of got you going, right? Was private lending, would you say?
Yeah, or at least like private equity.
Private equity. Yeah. So if someone, because I mean, starting out just like in real estate, that's not as typical as someone doing wholesale or just buying a duplex, right? How would you? What advice would you give to someone looking to raise money for a deal, kind of in a similar way? Do you go to your family, or do you you start calling people that are rich, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's a little bit different for everyone. So, like I said, my parents didn't have a ton of money to invest. My network isn't super rich, but I went to my mom, and I went to actually now my soon-to-be father-in-law, and I showed them what I was learning, and I said, hey, like, this is what I'm trying to do, this real estate stuff. This is why the stock market isn't evil, but why it maybe isn't the best allocation of like 90% of your portfolio. And so then I kind of got them on board, and like I said, going back to the thing of being able to lean on someone with more experience, it honestly was not scary. It wasn't like mentally difficult for me at all to have them invest in a deal, because I knew that I would have put a ton of money in this deal. Like, it was a fire deal. And so if I were to have been accepting their money for a deal that I, was doing for the first time, that would have been a little freaky, because I would have been like, oh my gosh, what if I lose it? There's so much stuff. You just like don't know what you don't know. But putting it into someone else's deal was honestly pretty easy. So I'd say, like, be a steward of your family's money, but I would totally recommend dipping into that if you have any. And if you don't, dip into your family's friends. And if they don't have any money, dip into your friends. Like, I think people really underestimate how much money is in their network. So actually just before this call, we were touring a wedding venue, and I met up, so we're talking to the owner, super, like, ridiculously nice place. I was just crazy blown away, on a beautiful lake here in south of Austin. And it was a husband and wife owner, and I was kind of like, man, this is beautiful. Are y'all just like a husband-wife team? And he was like, yeah, we raise money. Then I told him about what I did. And then I asked him more about how we raised money and how we structured the deal. And he was like, yeah, man, we raised like $3 million and we just got it from like our friends and family. It took us like 3 years to raise all that money, and thinking like, man, and these are not rich people either. Like even like I would challenge anyone who thinks their network isn't vast, because I was getting lunch with someone and he was telling me like, dude, I don't know what I want to do. I might want to be a realtor. I might want to do this, but I just, no one, like my parents don't have any money, blah, blah, blah. And then we keep talking and I keep like poking his brain and I'm like, hey, come on, who's got money? He's like, well, actually, I guess that like my girlfriend's friend's brother's stepmom is like the top real estate, agent in New Jersey, and she makes 2.5 million a year. And I'm like, boom, like get lunch with her. She probably isn't gonna have time for you, but have her set up a lunch with her reports, and then like just go down the ladder, dive into that, and all of a sudden you're gonna like open this $10 million. Because the other cool thing, like if you have a family friend who's say an engineer and they make 100K a year and they got 1 million in their 401K, maybe you can get a $50,000 check from them or whatever. That person has 50 coworkers who are probably in a super similar boat. So you can go give a little, speech. It doesn't cost them anything. You say, like, hey, I'll get you all free. I'll bring pizza if y'all let me talk to you for 30 minutes. And you give a little presentation maybe. You say, hey, this is why investing's so good. Okay, well, now you just tapped in $50 million worth of 401k money. So I think with enough, like, audacity, like, your networks can, I don't think there's anyone in America. I think it's a beautiful thing about America is that like if you look hard enough, there's money right next to you. You don't have to start crazy. You don't have to build a website or any crazy funnels or start a YouTube channel or a podcast or anything. Like even though those things can help and you can layer on top, like if you just dive into your network and you continue going layer by layer, like there's a lot of money there.
And it makes it so much less scary how you were saying, if you can find a deal. You're not saying, hey, give me $10 million so I can go start a business. You're saying, hey, I know this guy who's legit. You don't have to trust me, trust this guy. That's a whole different thing than just asking people for money, right?
100%. And I will say, you're going to be compensated appropriately. So saying you're not going to make much money because that's how it works. Like people think what I did is the riskiest thing on earth. Which now I would say, we are taking a lot more risk and we are being compensated for that, like being the lead sponsors on the deal. But like, as far as raising money, it's not that risky. It should be beneficial. Like, wouldn't you want your parents to have a better retirement? Like, don't I want my mom to have a bunch of money wrapped up in like cash flowing real estate than like a 401k bubble that hopefully pops at the right time,
Yeah.
when she's 65 and not when she's 66 or whatever. So like, there's that benefit of like, you really are helping these people, like, cause it shouldn't be a self-serving thing, you should actually be providing value and like connecting them with good deals and not just like using people as a means to an end, but you're actually helping people invest better for retirement. And like I said, you're able to lean on that experience. And then, because I will say, if someone gives me $1 million and I put it in someone else's deal, that'll give me enough money for rent for like a month. Depending on the deal, it could be a lot more than that. But if someone gives me $1 million and I start a cupcake business, I mean, yeah, dude, I could probably sell hella cupcakes and make a ton of money. So like, but it is a lot of risk, and you have to trust your own, projections and your own ability to run a business. So I think you can ease into that,
Well, then the other side of that, right, is probably the more difficult, right? The raising money, you can get really creative and kind of just have some elbow grease and get pretty far with that. But finding that deal that you can use that on, that seems a little more challenging. And you said, was that from the LinkedIn messaging that you were able to get on board with that?
Yeah, it was. I met my partner, Andy, who I worked with last year, and I was right around this time, I think is when I reached out to him. And I just said, we kind of connected on like sharing the same face, and so we talked and just kind of got to know each other. And from there, we kind of started. He was like, "Well, you know what, man? Like, I kind of need some help building out some of these like systems and like, I'm building my fund." And so I said, "Hey, dude, I'll do whatever the hell you want. I will, write your emails, do whatever." And then eventually that relationship, because Andy kind of was a little bit better connected. He's in his 40s, looks like he's in his 20s if you're listening, and he like has these relationships that I don't have, and so he was actually able to then. It was like a connection to a connection. Sounds like a pyramid scheme, but he has a better relationship with Matt Faircloth that Andy and I started the fund, and then that way we were able to bring money into this fund again. So it's like SEC compliant, because you can't be compensated directly for raising money. So that's another thing I'd warn people about. It's like talk to your lawyer before you ever raise money for a deal. But basically, having that relationship with Andy and helping him build his company, then I got to play in this sphere where, because maybe you can think of Matt Faircloth, the guy I raised the deal for. I've only talked to him, a handful of times. So I'm not super close with Matt directly, but I'm super close with Andy. And so Matt was almost like this shooting star way off in the sky. And then having that relationship with Andy kind of brought me out to the edge of the atmosphere to where now it was actually in reach, to where then I could actually do that deal with Matt Faircloth. And then now I'm doing what Matt Faircloth does, right? So now I'm in the same orbit. And I think you just have to you can step your way up like that. So
yeah, that's so cool. I actually have a similar situation to that. Not to compare myself to anything you've done. I've never closed the deal, and so, but just to show that there's relationships that can kind of lead to things. I'm in Arizona, right? So I want to be in real estate, so I look up how to become a realtor. That's like my next thought, is just be a realtor. And then I realized, okay, that's not where the money's at. So I kind of start going through all these processes, read this book, start this podcast, talk to all these investors. Okay, that's the way to go. I got into Arizona real estate investor, the ASRIA group for Arizona. And then I met the guy that runs the Prescott, where I live, group. And I just stayed in touch with him for a week. And so now he has me find deals for him in his market, which he invests in Indiana. So now I'm just kind of working with him, and I've just completely learned everything from working with this guy, which I had literally no concept. I was going to be how do I get a real estate license? That's what my thought was. And so, I mean, it is true. You can meet someone and, through that relationship, it can kind of turn into something completely different. My goal is to kind of, go towards what you're doing. And, no one wants to just be the assistant or whatever forever. You want to graduate into doing the big deals. So that's so cool that you're just a real life example of how that works.
Yeah, 100%. And that relationship is totally going to, bear some kind of fruit. Even if it were to end right now and you weren't to get the big finale you're hoping for, you've already learned a lot, and a lot has happened. And like you said, it just, you kind of put in the work, because I'm sure that the guy you're working with, he doesn't want you to be his assistant forever. Maybe on paper he does, because you help him. But that, it's kind of the same thing. You give and you take, and eventually you're going to have an assistant that's going to help you find deals and do whatever. And eventually you can build a business where that person's even compensated. So, obviously working for free or working for very little money is not sustainable. But you can get to the point where maybe you find someone who's less driven or whatever. You pay them $60K a year, and you're taking care of them. That's something that's really blowing my mind as we're starting to think about hiring employees and stuff. Is because I also like what you touched on. What we're doing, investment is a business, and I think there is gray area, but there's very much this dichotomy of either you can be a mom and pop and buy a 10 unit, all cash and just sit there and cash flow and everything's fun, and you bring your tenants lunch and stuff. Or you jump into the bigger stuff, and the bigger stuff requires a lot more overhead. Financing is super bureaucratic. You need property management unless you want to be fixing a ton of toilets and you know, doing a lot of stuff. Like self-managing can be really difficult, and so don't want to understate that. Like it becomes a business, and like you have to really question. Because then there's some people who are like, hey, I'm gonna be a doctor. How do I buy a 100 unit? And it's like, dude, maybe you just want to be a doctor and then passively invest in deals because like it is a lot of work, you know. Um, so yeah, that's one thing I don't want to understate too is like uh, this is real estate super fun and like I love that we both love it, but it's like not the only like I think everyone should invest in real estate period, but that doesn't mean you have to like be ripping your hair out to invest in real estate. Like these passive investors that we raise money from, they're getting the sweet deal, bro. They just write us $100,000 check and then they get paid every month. Like, dude, that's where we're all trying to be ultimately, you know.
Yeah.
So
Do you enjoy the kind of hands-on negotiating and dealing with contracts and stuff like that? Do you enjoy that part of real estate?
I wouldn't say I enjoy it. I think what I really enjoy is just building like businesses, I guess. And that sounds so pretentious to say because I still have not like I'm not like a business guru. Like I don't have any crazy experience. Uh, but you know, I'm not necessarily married to real estate. Lots of things interest me. I have to like hamper down my shiny object syndrome because I just get so fascinated by new things all the time. Uh, but ultimately, like it's really fun to me to like be presented a problem and like try to figure out how to solve it. So like, and I guess I would say at a higher level. So like, um, you know, it's not so much a matter of I want to get really, really good at specifically, you know, this task in real estate. It's a matter of like, how can I build a business where I can put someone in place to do that so I can continue like marching forward. And like, I think that is kind of the role of a leader of a company as well as like, for one, you know, serving your employees. But then if you think about like, well, what does growing the company mean? It means marching forward, pushing the company forward, pushing revenue, like finding new deals, finding new opportunity, and then like placing people behind you to like help push. And I think that's what excites me. You know, it's like uh, if I just try to have a long-term perspective and think, man, how can I grow this company? What opportunities there going to be in like 1, 3, 5, 10 years, and how can I like help get us there? That's what's fun. If that's crypto, then hell yeah. If that's real estate, sweet. If that's public equities, probably not because I can't compete with quantitative hedge funds. But like, you know, whatever it might be, it's just the idea of like growing a company is what excites me.
Mhm.
And like the stuff that accompanies that. Really kind of like the unknown. The unknown kind of excites me because you never know it. You know,
Yeah.
like there's like the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world are constantly dealing with stuff they've never had to deal with before, and like that's so sick to me.
Hmm.
So.
Yeah, and then you get better at dealing with things you don't know, and those things you don't know turn bigger, and then that's how you
That's a
get
great point.
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
At what point do you see yourself in your own business stepping back or taking more of that really CEO big picture type decisions? Do you have like a game plan where it's like, okay, I need to get this many units, or what does that look like for you?
That's a great question. For one, it's cool that me and Kyle get to lean on each other. Interesting, kind of complementary personalities. So I would say Kyle is much more like driven type, like he's the driver, I guess, and I tend to like be in the passenger seat, like looking out the window, kind of just like I'm more aloof, I would say. But like I said, we're very complementary in our uh, like how we look at life and business and how we want to drive it forward. So for right now, I think it's kind of unavoidable that we do have to, you know, we're dealing with like actually raising the money and getting PPM signed and making sure everything's organized. You know, and our first hire, we're actually working with him right now. His name's David, and he's like the smartest guy ever. And it's so cool to think that like I can hire someone smarter than me to do my job better than me. Like that seems like a cheat code, you know? And so I think it just scales up from there. Because once David is taking care of, you know, managing the property managers, you know, managing our budgets, like actually helping with the mechanics of raising money and like that stuff, then that frees up our time to go focus on bigger stuff. But then we're going to get to the point where David needs a David, and then we'll do that, and then that'll free up David's time to focus on what we were doing. And you can kind of keep just like, that's the difference between a pyramid scheme and an actual company. It's like a pyramid scheme hires more employees to become more profitable, right? And a company, a well-run company, doesn't hire employees till you need them, I guess. And so that's kind of how I vision it. But the other half of that question is like, when do you see, or I guess like, as far as career, what I will say is, as of right now, this could change, but as of right now, I don't envision being a billionaire and having, giant glass skyscraper with 50,000 employees in it. I mean, like, I want to be the freaking baseball coach, and I want to be like, go to the dance recitals, and I want to like be the CEO of the PTO and shit, like I definitely really value family and like being present, and like because I'm also very into like some more, like, I kind of describe myself as like the aloof guy. I love music, I love playing music. I want to really get involved with my church, maybe even start one. Like I definitely have aspirations far outside of just business. So I think really that's kind of just listening to the voice of like, continue pushing. Like I said, not getting married to anything, not saying, oh, I need 10,000 units, or I need this much net worth, or I need this much whatever. Really, it's a matter of like, I love growing this business. And when I stop loving growing this business, I'll stop and reassess and make sure I'm making the right decision. And if one day I just say, you know what, I want to move to Zimbabwe and just like build houses, then I'll do that, So I think that's kind of the cool thing is, putting in the sacrifice. Like, you either choose your sacrifice or it chooses you, if you've ever heard that. So either I can put in the work now and try to build up these income streams and get to the point where I have influence and authority and like impact, or I can just like sit on my ass and my sacrifices will be chosen for me. And, I won't be able to take that vacation, and I won't be able to make that dance recital because I'm going to have to work long, and I'm going to have to like, and that just terrifies me to think of like those sacrifices being made for me, as opposed to me sacrificing now when I have no kids, and like a lot less responsibility. But yeah, and then also to jump back again to the original point, I don't want to undermine the fact that like I do really have aspirations to be a very influential person. Like, I would love the idea of like public office is interesting to me. I know nothing about the government or politics in general. It just seems cool. Maybe as like a 67-year-old, who knows? And also just having the ability to influence, because I think wealth really is influence. And I think there's a lot of like power and responsibility that comes with it, and I would love to like be a steward of that and help communities, help whatever the heck I can, which you just have that like leverage when you have influence and money, which is like two words that just saying those probably like makes people shudder a little bit, like, oh, it sounds evil, but like when used in a good way, I mean, it can be really, really incredible. So
yeah, dude, listen, Van, your whole story, everything you're saying is super inspiring. I can tell you're very genuine, and I mean, at such a young age, you just have so much wisdom. Like, I want to try to be exactly what you are creating, and it's so cool to have these conversations, because I just kind of get a look into someone else's mind and see what you're thinking, and that's just so motivating for me. And I'm sure anyone that's listening to this is probably just getting fired up right now to go make something out of their life. So it's awesome, dude, and I really appreciate you taking the time to explain all that, because dude, there's a lot of value that you just put into this podcast. So that's really great, man.
Dude, I really appreciate it. Because I feel the same way talking to you, man. It's so cool to hear that like you're on your grind right now, because something I struggle with is I feel really like I struggle with like conscientiousness. Like, I have trouble doing or like taking action sometimes, which is like, I don't know, it may sound surprising to people, but it's just cool to hear like I almost get jealous when I think of like I know you're not necessarily in the military, but like I talk to military dudes or like super, super disciplined people, and I'm like jealous because I'm like, dude, I wish I could just like do stuff. So it's super fun for me to like talk because I can just like spill my thoughts. But it's I appreciate you saying that because I definitely don't want to like pass off this image to everyone that like I'm smarter and richer and like have something figured out that like they don't because
yeah, well, I think that's the great part of podcasts is in an hour-long conversation, you can really get to know if someone is authentic or if what they're saying is actually who they are. And I mean, you can't really hide in an hour-long conversation. So I think it's right there. But
sweet.
The last question I always like to ask is, what's a book you recommend?
It's a good question. So speaking on that conscientiousness part, I'm super self-conscious right now that I've not been reading enough. But the one book I would say that I just reread and is blowing my mind is 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson.
I just bought that book. It's on its way here.
Yeah, so that Jordan Peterson is like one of the most influential guys in my life. That book, it really kind of shows you. It talks about this dichotomy of chaos and evil, and I'm sorry, not chaos and order. So chaos not necessarily being bad. Chaos is just the unknown, and order being the known. So like he has a ton of examples in the book, but order kind of being like, you don't really know where your keys are, which is chaos, and then you get home and you see them on the counter where you thought they were, and that feeling is like order. And you're like, okay, things are how they should be. But chaos can also be, the excitement of the unknown, and like which pulls you forward into the future. And like this push and pull of that is really mind blowing. And it just breaks down some really fundamental things about psychology that I just think everyone can benefit from, and really makes you think about like who you are and what your place is, in relation to other people. That book is just, I know, changed a lot of lives. One of the dudes in my church group lost like 150 pounds after he read that book, just because
wow.
Yeah, it went from like 300 to 150, just because that book has changed a lot of lives. So,
that's so cool. I'm excited to read that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right, man. How can people find you on Instagram, or do you have anything you want to plug?
Yeah, dude, I wish I was better at that. I'm actually going to spend the next 6 months working on that, but you can definitely reach me at Instagram at Van Hagye, and then you can email me at van@zioncapgroup.com. But for now, me and Kyle are working on a YouTube channel, which hopefully will go up in the next couple months, as well as a website, and maybe even put together some kind of like course or something. Sounds cringy to say, but stuff's on the horizon. But for now, just Instagram and email.
All right, Van Hagye, everybody, get wealthy.